Okay, good morning. So today we are going to do another application on quantum computing. So let me start. So first, I will give you some background and some historical introduction and some classification of the subject about quantum computing. So if you look at on the left hand side, there is a register. There is a 0101 in blue. So this is nothing but a register of a binary computer. The classical computer that we see or we use today. And at the bottom there is a yellow 0 and 1 rotating arrows you can see. So these are nothing but qubits. So this is a register of a quantum computer. So will show you what is the difference between these two. Here is a Google CEO Sundar Pichai standing with the quantum computer at Google laboratory in Santa Barbara, California. So you can see a real computer here, quantum computer. When the Google claims actually quantum computing supremacy, so you will know about it. Okay, so just like we had, the motivation that biology and computer science, life and computation are related, and I am confident at their interface, great discoveries await those who seek them. So many underlying processes for life are quantum based on quantum mechanics. So these laws are based on quantum mechanics. So that's why it's very very important. So I will talk about philosophy of information processing. In fact, showing that ICT is everywhere. Of course, you know that. So there are two sides of the same coin: communication and computation. Both are nothing but information processing. So what is computation and what is communication? So IT, that information technology, is applications and mathematical routines, computer science, Turing machine. And CT stands for communication technology, application layer, and mathematical routines, theory of communication, information coding theory. Then somebody showed that you can do computation by circuits. So there is a relation by logic gates and circuits. So hardware, software, electronics, and VLSI semiconductor technology is based on that. This is a summary of ICT, actually. So what is a computer? A computer is a device, a machine which processes information. Processing means storing and manipulating, and representation of information in classical computer is based on bits. It's a binary. Like you can see that it's bits 0 and 1. Whereas representation of information in quantum computers is based on quantum physics. You can see bits. These are rotating vectors rotating around a sphere known as Bloch sphere. So we will see in more details about these qubits. What is the purpose of computing? The purpose of computing is insight, not numbers. The purpose of computing numbers is not yet insight. This is a famous quote by Hamming. Now, what is communication? Sending or receiving information from here to there. This will require information processing, storing and manipulation. So, it require computer. Storing means sending information from now to then, and retrieving and receiving information from then to now. What is information? Representation of information is different in different information processing machines. Okay, so digital information processing, quantum information processing, chemical information processing, biological information processing, structural information processing, social information processing, and natural information processing. So now we are going to focus on quantum information processing. A new field is emerging, which is highly interdisciplinary, based on computer science, electrical engineering, communications, coding, and information theory. Is known as information processing in nature, and it's highly interdisciplinary because it involves all the basic sciences: mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, nanotechnology, medicine, and it's gold mine for science, technology, and business. One question that is asked by Sattler at MIT, how systems of all kinds, computers, atoms, brains, cells, societies, and the universe as a whole process information. So many underlying processes in the universe or in the uh, in the society around us, everything is in terms of processing information. And quantum information processing or quantum ICT is one of the key component there. For example, a satellite has written and argued that basically our universe is nothing but a quantum computer. So programming the universe, this is a nice book by Satellite. You can read it. Everything in the universe is made of bits, not chunks of stuff, but chunks of information, ones and zeros. Atoms and electrons are bits. Atomic collisions are operations, and machine learning language is the laws of physics. The universe is a quantum computer. So this is something nice book to read. You can see from this point of view. Even thought process. Your thought is nothing but a computational process, and there is a very nice model by Rosa Penrose and Stuart Hamrove. Rosa Penrose is a mathematician, as you know, and Stuart Hamrove is a doctor. They propose what is known as quantum mind. So the consciousness inside our brain is because of a quantum computer. So inside our brain, we have neurons, and inside the neurons, we have what is known as microtubules like structures, and microtubules are made of proteins, tubulin protein, and which could be in two states, alpha and beta. And they have argued that this tubulin protein could be in two states, like it acts as a qubit. So consciousness that we have is because of quantum computing, so that happens inside the brain. So now we have all the branches of ICT in terms of quantum. So we have mathematics of quantum information processing, quantum computing, quantum engineering, quantum algorithms, quantum communication, quantum signal processing. Spintronics is generalization of electronics. So quantum logic, gates, and circuits. Because now you store information on spin of the electrons. So that's why it's known as spintronics. Quantum programming languages, quantum networks, quantum storage, quantum logic, quantum robotics, quantum security and cryptography, quantum coding and information theory, quantum internet, and quantum satellite. So as you know that some of the terms used in natural computing are unconventional computing, optical computing, chemical computing, and so on. And quantum computing is one of them. Is main branch is natural computing. Okay, so now after setting the stage, now I'm going to talk about some historical development of computer science, how computer science started. So in 1900, in International Congress of Mathematicians in Paris, France, David Hilbert he proposed 23 problems, and one of them was, this decision problem. And actually, he said that these were unsolved problems, and he told that mankind will remember him for these problems, and which is true. Many of them are still unsolved out of 23. So one of the decision problem was whether there was a mechanical procedure by which the truth or falsity of many mathematical conjecture could be decided. Now, answer to this question is in negative, that it is not possible. And mechanical means, mechanical was misunderstood by two people, actually by Alan Turing, and he came up with an idea of Turing machine. And he showed that with the Turing machine, there are problems which you cannot solve, So this answer was also given by Church in negative, using lambda calculus. So basically, this is the two people answered the same question in negative. But Alan Turing idea actually resulted in what is known as computer science. So Hilbert formalism idea was probably all mathematics follows from a system of axioms, and that the axiom system is consistent. Mathematics should be formulated as a solid logical foundation. Now we know it is not possible. So Alan Turing in 1936, he gave up the idea that he in this paper, on computable numbers with an application to the decision problem. He gave the idea of Turing machine, and he showed that halting problem is a problem which is undecidable by Turing machine. So there is a barrier. So there are certain problems Turing machine cannot solve. Okay, so this was a remarkable or seminal work by Alan Turing, and we can safely say this is the birth of formally computer science. Turing thesis says that any computation carried out by mechanical means can be performed by a Turing machine. So an algorithm for a problem is a Turing machine which solves the problem. So algorithm describes the steps of the mechanical means. This is easily translated to computation steps of a Turing machine. When we say there exists an algorithm, we mean there exists a Turing machine that executes the algorithm. There are different variations of the Turing machine. First of one is standard Turing machine. A standard model has infinite tape, read and write head, left or right, control unit, which is a deterministic choice. So at each input, A, B, C, whatever it is, at each input, you have a deterministic choice to go. So this is a standard model of Turing machine. Turing machine can read or write, and it can move left or right on the tape. It can read, write, or replace any symbol. There are other variations. Turing machines, stay option, semi-infinite tape, offline tape, multiple tape, multi-dimensional tape, non-deterministic Turing machine. Non-deterministic Turing machine means you have, after each input, you have multiple paths to go, and you choose both of them parallelly. So computation goes parallelly. It's a non-deterministic choice. And the probabilistic Turing machine, the probabilistic Turing machine also so again you have multiple paths, but you choose the path depending upon the probabilities. Okay, so that is a probabilistic Turing machine. Each Turing machine has different classes. So well, in 1956, there was another important discovery in computer science, and this is a very, 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 important slide for computer science people. This summarizes that what kind of machines are possible. So Noam Chomsky actually classified the language in. He says that there are four kind of languages: regular language, context-free languages, context-sensitive languages, and recursively enumerable languages. And each language has a machine which it can accept. So recursively enumerable language can be accepted by a Turing machine. Context sensitive languages are accepted by linear bounded automata. Linear bounded automata is a special kind of Turing machine where the input is bounded by some reason. So you are allowed only to use portion of the tape. Okay. And context free languages are accepted by push-down automata. Push-down automata is basically finite state automata with the stack memory. And regular languages are accepted by finite state automata. So finite state automata means basically we have a at each input you have to move into some state. So it's a state diagram. You can think of. So you move from one state to the other state. So very are like a vending machine. You put a coin and output is in terms of a maybe a water bottle or something. And similarly in the elevator, when you use the elevator brain is also made of finite automata. So this is simply, there is no memory in finite automata. Okay, so this is simple. You input and output is done. Now, each of these languages have grammar, so they are known as type 0, type 1, type 2, type 3. And each language can be specified by its production rules. So, no, normally, actually, these production rules are sequential. So like first production rule will give you second production rule, and then second will give you third, and so on. Sometime when we generalize these ideas and we define production rules, when we use production rules in parallel, we get different systems like L systems. In fact, a new branch has been established known as algorithmic botany. So, you can explain all these are the algorithms to generate trees, forests, and so on. So basically, in animation industry, these things are quite useful. Okay, now what are the fundamental limitations and capabilities of computers? So we need to answer in terms of automata. Automata is, all these four machines are known as automata: Turing machine, LBA, push-down automata, finite state automata. Okay. Then computability theory, what kind of things we study in computability theory, and the complexity I'll show you. So an automata is a system which obtains, transforms, transmits, and uses information to perform its functions without direct human participation. It is a self-operational. So this is the definition of automata. And the most general form of deterministic automata is a Turing machine. As you saw that there are four machines, and that one is a Turing machine is the most general one. Okay. In computability theory, so objective is to classify problems that are solvable or not solvable. So essentially, we study also these kind of problems, like what problems can Turing machines solve, what other systems are equivalent to Turing machines, what problems require more powerful machines, what problem can be solved by less powerful machines. Okay. In complexity, we study estimates the resource requirements for certain algorithms and problem class. Okay. So objective is to classify problems as easy ones and hard ones. So easy problems are, for example, sorting problem. Arranging some numbers, list of numbers in ascending order or descending order is a sorting problem. Okay, this is an easy problem. Now I would like to describe you hard problem. Factoring integers is a hard problem. We know that from fundamental theorem of arithmetic, any integer n greater than 1 is a product of is a partial product of prime powers. So where pi is the prime and ri's are non-negative numbers. So that means if I input 15, answer should be 3 into 5. If I input 16, answer is 2 raised to the power 4. Right. So basically, uh, uh, you know, we now want to write a computer program. So the input is integer n and output should be this prime factorization. So now, so so the question is how easy it is, how difficult it is. So let me show you how much difficult it is to factor a 2000 digit number. There is an estimate given by Umesh Vajirani. It's a nice estimate, and I am reading the statement for you. It's not just a case that all the computers in the world today would be unable to factor that number. It's really much more dramatic. Even if you imagine that every particle in the universe was a classical computer and was computing at full speed for the entire life of the universe, that would be insufficient to factor that number. Now you see the statement, every particle in the universe is a computer that we use today, and they compute for the entire, life of the universe. That will be insufficient to factor the number. That much difficult it is. And it is because of this difficulty, uh, Rivest, Shamir, and Edelman, Professor Rivest at MIT, and Shamir and Edelman actually invented what is known as RSA encryption system, RSA crypto system, and you know they founded a company in 1977. Actually, 1976. This was based on an idea given in 1976, and they have used this integer factorization problem to build the crypto system, and this is nothing but the backbone of the current security on the internet. So we hope by 2038, because of quantum computers, we will not be able to use them. So we can break easily all the integer factorization. We can solve all the integer factorization problem easily. Okay, so these are some RSA numbers. You can see that RSA 100, 110, 120. So how many decimal digits are there, binary digits are there, and cash price was given, and when they were factored. And in fact, from RSA 260, we don't know the factors. So I'll show you some examples, and their prices are very high. So $200,000, $150,000, $100,000. Now these prices are discontinued in 2007. But still, if you are able to factor some numbers, you will get probably some paper publication. So here is a number. For example, RSA 250. It's a 250 digit number, and the factors are given here. You see one prime and multiply another prime. So you need to write a computer program. Input is this number and output is this factor. This is a difficult problem. 260 factor is not known, 270 factor is not known, 896 factor is not known, right? All these are open problems, and I show you in the list. So many of them are open still. so you can actually s- try your hand. Now, I would like to talk about, so basically once somebody has discovered Turing machine, as I told you, it's a pen and paper, computer. It's a thought computer. So how do we really build the computer? So we need circuits. So somebody gave circuit model of computing, which is very, very important actually. So circuit model of computing. So model of circuits and gates. So a circuit with k inputs and one output correspond to a function f from z to raised to power k to z to raised to power l. So that means there are certain inputs, binary inputs and binary outputs are there. It's a function. So there are examples like wire, NOT gate, AND gate, OR gate, XOR gate, NAND gate. There are some tables for them. You know that what are these? If x is 0, y is 0, then x and y is 1, all others are 0, right? If x is 1, y is 1, so then x and y is 1, x or y is 1, and XOR and NAND is 0, and so on. Now, there is another important gate known as NOT gate. This is a reversible gate. What do you mean by reversible gate? So, if you know the output, find the input. You know, this is the only gate which is reversible in classical computing. Later on, you will see in quantum computing that many gates are reversible gates. So this is something very, very important. Now, the result that is there, which because of which we are able to do any computation by circuits, is the following theorem: that every function f from 0 1 raised to power k to 0 1 raised to power l has a circuit that computes it. So that means any computation that you can do from any general computation can be broken down into circuits. And actually, the proof of this result is based on induction. So you can find it any book on in computer science. Now, some gems of classical computing. I think this is the something about storage. You might be knowing that there are cave paintings, papers, tally sticks, papyrus, paper, punch card, hard disk, and so on. CD, CD-ROM, compact flash, DVD, memory stick, USB flash drive, Blu-ray disc, HD DVD, and cloud data storage. Okay, so these are the one of the important discoveries is storage, because of which computer it is a very important part of the computers. Other this picture I think I have shown you earlier, I guess, is a binary coded punch card for operating dooms. This is the first computer program that is written to draw this picture, right? Now, I'm ready to tell you the history of quantum computing. So basically, as you know, 1900 was the year which was very, very important for computer science, when the proper question was asked, because of which in 6 Turing machine was discovered. In the same manner, in 1900, there was another discovery by Max Planck. So there was a question that people asked: why does the color of radiation from any glowing body changes from red to orange and ultimately to blue as its temperature increases? And the answer was given by Max Planck. His answer was based on assumptions that radiation, like matter, comes in discrete quantities of energy, quanta, which is a Latin word for amount. And so this was the birth of quantum physics, actually. So this is of course, later Max Planck got the Nobel Prize. This was the birth of quantum physics. After people started talking about, can we make computers out of using quantum physics. Feynman gave a lecture, a famous lecture. There's a plenty of room at the bottom, and where he talked about that maybe we should build a computer based on quantum physics. And these were thoughts, early thoughts. So as you know that 1936, the first theoretical digital computer, Turing machine, was discovered, deterministic Turing machine. So here is a picture. You see that Turing machine, there are 4 ones and 3 ones, and it is adding actually. So, what it is doing, four ones and three ones is taking together. There is a separator between four ones and three ones. You see, this is a separator right now, zero, and then it is putting this together. So it is adding two numbers by Turing machine. So Turing machine was generalized to probabilistic Turing machine. As I told you that there are probabilities which will decide which path you should choose. 1968 is another very important year. It was the birth of quantum cryptography by Stephen Wizner. His seminal paper on conjugate coding was directed by IEEE Transaction Information Theory, but was eventually published in 1983. And this paper talks about the early, quantum cryptography. But actually, later on, this was, after 10 years from his discovery, it was again taken up by Charles Bennett uh, and uh, and his colleague. So they have come up with the BB8 protocol in 1984 based on his work. And this was basically first protocol, quantum cryptographic protocol, that is there. And later on, they demonstrated after 5 years from that point. Charles Bennett and Joe Smolin working on the first demonstration of quantum key distribution at IBM T.J. Watson Research Center. So this is the early days of quantum cryptography that happened. After that, it has gone into many directions. Even many practical implementations are there for quantum cryptography. So Charles Bennett is now known as father of quantum cryptography, and in '73 he showed that a reversible Turing machine was a theoretical possibility. This is something important, as I told you, that the classical gates are not reversible, but how do we do the reversible Turing machine? 1980, Paul Van Hoff gave the first quantum mechanical description of Turing machine. It was not a true Turing machine, but as each step, it was back in the classical state. So complexity-wise, it was not better than a classical reversible Turing machine. So this was the early sign of proposing. So basically, if you want to make a computer based on quantum physics, you need to come up with a Turing machine. So here, Paul Benioff suggested quantum mechanical description of Turing machine, but this was not truly true Turing machine, quantum Turing machine. 1982, Feynman showed that no classical Turing machine could simulate certain quantum phenomena without incurring an exponential slowdown, but that a universal quantum simulator could do so. So further, in 1985, David discovered the first true quantum Turing machine, QTM, and one can think of it as a generalization of a probabilistic Turing machine. All its operations are accomplished by quantum mechanical interactions. Also, he proposes the method of quantum parallelism. Quantum correct answer or no answer, but never an incorrect answer. So this is the birth of quantum computing, you can say, in 1985. So the theoretical birth is there of a quantum computer. But as you know, Turing machine alone is not sufficient to start building quantum computers. You require circuits. So that was another important discovery that happened later on. In another important discovery, Christopher Moore, who was at University of New Mexico, he showed that a particle moving at 3D potential can be equivalent to a Turing machine in 1990. And in fact, in year 2000, he generalizes the ideas of push-down automata and finite automata to quantum push-down automata and quantum finite automata. So this was a important discovery, from theoretical computer science point of view. So 1991, Richard Zosa, he describes his classes of functions that can and cannot be computed by quantum parallelism. In 1992, David and Richard again showed that a quantum Turing machine is exponentially faster than deterministic Turing machine by presenting an example which was solved by quantum Turing machine in polynomial time. But this example was also easily solvable by probabilistic Turing machine. Okay. Continuing the work further, Berthium and Bressak proved that P is strictly subset of QP. I'll tell you what is class P problems. So this was the first definite separation between classical computing and quantum computing. Again, this is a famous algorithm. Basically, this is a famous work by Breshmi and Vajrani again. They described a universal quantum Turing machine that can simulate any other quantum Turing machine efficiently. They have set up the foundational work for Siemens and Shor's paper later on. So Umesh Vajirani played a key important role in basically development of a quantum computers. In 1993, Andrew C. Yao showed that complexity theory for quantum circuits matches that of quantum Turing machine. This is the study of quantum circuits which are simpler to design and analyze than quantum Turing machine. So circuits now we have in our hand, so we can easily build the machines. We can think of hardware now because the circuits are there with you. In 1994, Bertham and Prasad proved that randomness alone is not what gives quantum Turing machines the edge over Turing machines. They proved that there is a decision problem that is solved in Polymer type-based quantum Turing machine, but which requires exponential time in the worst case on a deterministic Turing machine or a probabilistic Turing machine. First time anyone showed that a quantum Turing machine beats probabilistic Turing machine. Also, they have showed that there is a decision problem that is solved in exponential time on a quantum Turing machine, but which requires double exponential time on a deterministic Turing machine on all but a few instances. Okay, so first time actually somebody showed that quantum Turing machine is superior than probabilistic Turing machine. And Simon also in the same year lays the foundation work for Shor's algorithm. Now comes Peter Shor. So he picked up two killer applications. One is RSA crypto system, the security of which was based on factoring a given integer into its prime factors, as I showed to you, and the smart card applications where security is based on discrete log problem. He showed that so as you know that integer factorization is used in RSA crypto system so in 1994, Peter Shor discovered a polynomial time algorithm for factoring large integers and solving discrete log problem. So that means you can actually easily solve these problems on quantum computer. So actually this is also there is interesting history here. When Peter gave a first lecture on factoring integers, the algorithm was not fully developed. But immediately he got attention and many people started talking about that Peter Shor had discovered something really useful. So Umesh Vajrani called Peter Shor and asked him whether whether if you have discovered the polynomial time algorithm for factoring it is, please let me know how it is done. So Peter actually at that point of time it was not fully developed, so it took 5 days. He actually worked out the problem and finally he told Umesh Vajirani that this is the solution. So that was an interesting thing actually. 1995. So basically, uh, you so if you want to build a quantum computer, I mean, so you require quantum Turing machine, which was done. You require circuits, which is also done. But unless you have error correction, so coding theory, you cannot proceed further, right? So that Peter Shor himself solved this problem in 1995. He gave the existence of quantum error correcting codes. He showed that you can actually construct 9-qubit code to correct error. So that was the first paper he published. And independently at that point of time, it was discovered by some other people like Andrew Steen discovered pretty soon independently quantum error correcting codes. Peter's idea was using 9-qubit code, and there was Steen was 5-qubit code. There was also 7-qubit code that was discovered actually. So 5 is optimal actually, to correct single qubit. So, and also there are two Israeli scientists. They have shown that in 1996 that quantum error correcting codes could theoretically push error rates close to zero. This was an important discovery actually, theoretically, so this is something important. So this was the birth of quantum error correction. In 1996, L.K. Grover, who was at AT&T Bell Labs, he was from IIT Bombay earlier. So he gave a search algorithm. So if you have n objects, you have to locate one. It will take, the worst case complexity is order of n. You have to look at everything once, But in case of quantum computer using his algorithm, you can locate one object in order of square root of n. So this is faster. So roughly, if we have a crossword puzzle like this given here, and clue is fish, and you have online dictionary with 1000 k words arranged alphabetically, you could program it to look for solution of the puzzle. So it typically finds the answer after looking through 500,000 words. It is very difficult to do better than this by a classical computer. With quantum computer, this can be performed in 1000 steps by using Grover's algorithm, which is optimal. So there are different complexity classes that has been discovered, total 545, and they're still continuing. The list is still going on. The first class is P. When you can solve a decision problem in polynomial time on a deterministic Turing machine. Class NP, you can solve a decision problem in polynomial time on non-deterministic Turing machine. BPP, you can solve a decision problem in polynomial time on probabilistic Turing machine with bounded error. BQP, you can solve a decision problem in polynomial time on quantum Turing machine with error probability 1/3. So your integer factorization and discrete log problem, they are a well-known problem in class NP. One can, so we know now that they are also in BQP. But so many of these relationship is given in this diagram here between different complexity classes. I have not explained all of them, but it's interesting relation, and many of them relations are also still not clear. Okay, so now we are ready with the history. So I have told you about the history of quantum computing. I have told you about the history of classical computing, how they are connected, and so on. Now we are ready to show you some basics of quantum register. I'll show you how things are working. Here is a classical register versus quantum register. So in the binary register, is string of 0 and 1, right? It's a string of 0 and 1. Bits of certain length. And so, for example, n is equal to 1, bit is either 0 or 1. N is equal to 3, so bits are either 001, 100, 000. Anything is possible, right? Now, in the quantum register, a string of qubits, blends of 0 and 1. Qubits mean smallest quantum information. Just like bit, we have qubits of length n. So strings of qubits are there. So for n is equal to 1, qubit quantum bit is just single. It's a q, you can say, and which could be superposition of 0 or 1. So 0, it could be 0, it could be 1, it could be anything in between, all together. Similarly, so for n is equal to 3 qubits, we have you can see that all 8 possible strings are simultaneously existing there. So that means when we are operating on a 3 qubit register, we are operating in all 8 binary strings simultaneously. So of course this computer has to be powerful than classical computer. You get some you can get some intuitive idea about this. So some roughly some idea that quantum computer is powerful. Now let me explain to you from what is quantum thing actually here. So look at this slit. If there is a light source and there are two slits, so what happens from here? The light will come, okay, and then passing through these holes, you will find interference, pattern of interference, at the in the screen, right? So now, if we allow only single photon, then also you see the interference. What is the reason? So basically, that tells us that photon is here as well as here simultaneously. How it is possible? This is kind of mystery, right? So quantum mechanics, if we assume, then we can say that there is a probability P, it is at first hole, and probability Q, it is at second hole. It exists, so P plus Q is equal to 1. The probability sum is 1. And so that's why we observe the interference pattern, So we can talk in terms of probabilities. So similarly, if you look at the hydrogen atom, there is single electron, ground state, and excited state is there. If I ask you electron is in the ground state or the excited state, so you will not be able to tell exactly, but we can talk in terms of probabilities. There is a probability P, electron is in the ground state, probability Q, it is in the excited state. Okay, but electron certainly exists, so P plus Q is equal to 1. Okay, so qubits can be represented by it's a two-state quantum system. So you can think of a sphere is known as Bloch sphere or qubit sphere. So one state is ket 0, another state is ket 1, and okay. So basically, if you look at this vector here, so this is rotating. This is rotating vector on the sphere. Everywhere it is rotating. That's why you saw in picture that it was rotating. So it could be in 0 state, it could be 1 state, it could be anywhere else in between. So when we do a measurement, so it collapse into either ground state or in the excited state. You can think of in terms of hydrogen atom if you see. So basic states are zero level is cat 0 is 1 0, and this is level 1 is cat 1, which is 0 1 is in C square. So general qubit is cat q is equal to alpha times cat 0 plus beta times cat 1, where alpha and beta are complex numbers, and mod of alpha square plus mod of beta square is equal to 1. So mod of alpha square is the probability amplitude for this to be in state 0, and mod of beta square. So if you do the measurement of the qubit, we'll get 0 with probability mod of alpha square and 1 with probability mod of beta square. So this is how, and the state will collapse into one of the states. So basically, when we do the measurement, we collapse into the ground state or in the excited state. Certain probabilities. So here is a 2-qubit thing. Cat psi is equal to alpha times cat 0 0 plus beta times cat 0 1 plus gamma times cat 1 0 plus delta times cat 1 1. So cat 0 0 is this. I think, let me explain to you what is the meaning of cat 0 0. Okay. So cat 0 0 is nothing but cat 0 tensor product cat 0. Okay. Now cat 0 tensor product. What is cat 0 actually? You saw from the previous slide that cat 0 is equal to 1 0. Right. So this is nothing but 1 0 tensor product 1 0. This is 1 times 1 0, 0 times 1 0 is equal to 1 0 0 0. This is how you can compute. So you can see that here we have 0 1, we can compute in a similar manner. Cat 0 tensor product cat 1, cat 1 tensor product cat 0 will be this, and so on. These are the basic states. I'm just explaining to you how this tensor product works actually. Okay. So so now the normalization condition here is mod of alpha square plus mod of beta square plus mod of gamma square plus mod of beta square is equal to 1. And these are the 4 basic states, for 2-qubit system, register of 2 qubits. So first bit is 0 with probability mod of alpha square plus mod of beta square, and collapse state is given here. So basically, in general, quantum register is given like this. Let me explain to you here. So quantum register in general is a 2 raised to n dimensional Hilbert space over the complex numbers, and basis states are I have shown to you, like B1, B2, Bn. We can like it as tensor products. Bi is 0 1. In general state is Cb and B. Okay, where Cb is the complex numbers, and where these are the probability amplitude sums, right, for each one. So this is the normalization condition. So qubit evaluation, all operations of a quantum computer are linear. In order to preserve the normalization condition, the operations have to be binary. It has to be unitary. Basic operations are single qubit and 2-qubit operations. Okay. So another important result, as I told you, we know in the classical computing any computation can be broken down into classical, can be broken down into certain basic logic gates. In the similar manner, it was shown in 1995 that any multiple qubit logic gate from control not as single qubit gates. This was an important result. Now I'm going to talk about the quantum computing landscape here. This is the blueprint of a practical quantum computer. There is a quantum processing unit, analog processing unit, digital processing unit, classical processing unit, and application layer. Okay. There are many quantum computing models: quantum gate array model, one-way quantum computer, adiabatic quantum computer, and topological quantum computer. And a lot of work has been done on quantum gate array, actually. So that is there. Physical realization of the quantum computers are done through superconducting quantum computing, trapped ion quantum computer, optical lattice, neutral atoms in optical lattices, quantum dot, quantum wire, molecular magnet, and so on. A lot of work has been done on superconducting quantum computing. So here qubit implemented by the state of a small superconducting circuits. This is a important one. I'll show you some hardware related things. So there are, we know that there is a CPU. Similarly, there is a QPU, quantum processing unit. So each of these companies, Google, IBM, Intel, Seagate, and IBM, so they have different machines they have built of different qubits size, and year is also listed here in this table. So superconducting is, you can see there's a lot of work has been done on this hardware, superconducting thing. Quantum tunneling based QPUs are basically built by D-Wave System, is a company in Canada. So they have come up with their own system. There is a first book on quantum programming, Foundations of Quantum Programming. It's a nice book. So it talks about different aspects in terms of quantum computing with classical control, quantum computing with quantum control, and so on. So it's nice book. There are many quantum softwares. D-Wave has come up with Ocean quantum software solution. Riget is Forest. IBM is IQ Experience QSkit. So I think these things you can actually try yourself by logging to there, and you can enjoy these things. There are many of these things are now very standard, actually. This is the architecture of the Ocean software, from D-Wave. So 20 years of quantum computing growth. We have 2-qubit. The first quantum computer was built in 1998. 2-qubit computer by IBM, Oxford, Berkeley, Stanford, MIT. After that, 5-qubit, 7-qubit, 12-qubit, 28-qubit. So D-Wave was the first company which was actually registered in Canada, and they were doing this quantum computing thing. And now we have Intel, and Google is doing quite a lot. So Digit has announced that they have released 128 qubit quantum computer. US companies which are working in this area. So most of top tech giants, Microsoft, IBM, Google, they are all building this quantum computer. There are 55 companies total which are working in this area now. So I think you can find more about it on internet. Some of them are working on quantum cryptography as well. So quantum computing will transform almost every aspect of our technology, science, economy, and life. So this is a general thing. So all these fields have been studied: quantum simulators, quantum networks, post-quantum cryptography. So basically, once we know that the classical crypto systems are not going to work, we need to go for something which is secure. And there are code-based cryptography. Again, coding theory is used, and those code-based cryptographic systems are pretty secure. And also lattice-based cryptography are very secure. So these are there. Apart from that, there is a quantum software, quantum cloud computing, and so on. These are the branches. In 1994, Peter Shor invents. This is a timeline. What will happen. In 1988, the first working 2-qubit quantum computer was demonstrated. Quantum supersymmetry were demonstrated by Google in 2018. 2019, IBM launches first 20-qubit commercial quantum computer named QSystem-1. 2019, many awareness programs are happening, about quantum computing worldwide. So again, so we hope by 2038, encryption in RSA potentially cracked by quantum computing, that is a possibility. Quantum machine learning is also is coming up. By 2027, I think people will have quantum computing, machine learning, or artificial intelligence, which is buzzword these days, So, so we hope in the next 15 years, you will see a lot of opportunities, in the quantum computing area. So US National Quantum Initiative is there, starting in June 2016, and recently, 21st December 2018, Congress has signed National Quantum Initiative Act in US. So there is a quote I would like to mention here. Let us make no mistake: the completion of a quantum computer is a new arm race. The competition to create the first large-scale quantum computer is heating up. The country that develops one first will have the ability to cripple militaries and topple the global economy. To deter such activity and to ensure our security, the United States must win this new race to the quantum computer evolution. This is for US government. In India also, Indian government announced in the budget 2020 in February, rupees 8,000 crore for over the next 5 years in the national mission on quantum technology and its applications. There are many people who are working at different places here, including DICT Gandhinagar, of course. And, there are different topics that are explored here. Theoretical, experimental, quantum error correction at IIT Madras and so on. Quantum communication at DAE, MEIT, CSIR. Chapata company recently raised, it's a hot news, $38 million for quantum machine learning. So, so there's a lot of scope for this, in quantum machine learning. So out of national computing, quantum computing is one of them. So opportunities are always theoretical, software, and experimental development. So this is a small video. Maybe I would like to play it. You can see this.
A successful quantum computer could crack computer that can compute many times faster than the current breed of supercomputers. A successful quantum computer could crack any code on the planet Earth.
That's what's exciting about quantum computing, and that's what we're...
Quantum computing is a fundamentally different computing paradigm, and it's one that offers a substantial improvement over known classical approaches for certain types of problems. Whether we're talking about supply transport or optimization problems, pharmaceuticals and drug discovery, or cryptanalysis. These are areas where quantum computing will really shine.
Quantum computers are not just smaller, faster versions of classical computers. They're fundamentally different.
This program covers the basics of quantum communication and quantum computing. And it's particularly designed for senior executives, mid-level management, people who want to learn about quantum computing, what it's good for, what's the state of the art, and where it's going.
With quantum computers, we get this ability to take a step closer to being able to actually computationally model aspects of physical systems.
We designed this course as a guided discovery to the algorithms that we use on a quantum computer. We have access to a broad range of expertise, both in industry as well as in government labs.
Single qubit, double qubit operation.
We'll even get a chance to implement these algorithms on the IBM quantum computer.
This is not decades away or 100 years away. That quantum age has now come.
Many researchers believe that quantum computing will be, for the 21st century, what classical conventional computing was for the 20th.
We have a number of algorithms that accelerate the solution of difficult combinatorial optimization problems.
That's part of the fun. That's where I'm there to see what can we do to enable that increased complexity of these qubits.
We're really here at the very beginning, and I just find that tremendously exciting.
So this was a quantum computing fundamental program at MIT. So you can do this. This is a certification course actually. This was the video I have taken from there. This is a book that you can read, classical book on quantum computing, quantum computation, quantum information by Michael Nilsson and Isaac Chong. Michael Nilsson is at Australia. Isaac Chong was at IBM. Thanks. I've used some graphics from the internet. I'm thankful to my collaborators on quantum error correction, Aaron Gulliver and David Glynn, and of course the funding agencies. That's all. So I think this was all.